My dear friends and colleagues, members of the State Board of Education, Mr. Secretary, deputies, and friends with PDE, it's been my blessing and honor to work with you and your predecessors on the State Board, along with PDE and our secretaries and deputy secretaries for these last 11 or 12 years. Karen Molchenow and Stephanie Jones are an amazing support team. And I'm so grateful to you both and our fantastic board leadership, starting with our chairwoman, Karen Farmer-White. Dr. Lee Williams leading the Council of Basic Education. I could name each and all of you around the table. In my time, our meetings have occasionally had strong differences of opinion, but we were largely free of bickering, which means we're blessed that our board is honored and esteemed because of our collective spirit of education. This spirit that we all possess is one of authentic care for the children and learners of our state. The diversity and the collaborative nature of our board tells the world that we are focused. As I announce my retirement from the State Board of Education today, along with all the other state boards I'm on, the Tuition Account Program 529 Board, the PA College Textbook Affordability Committee, the PA Professional Standards and Practices Commission, the Perkins State Plan Committee, and previously the Charter School Appeals Board, I hope that you can all bear with me for a few moments while I share some thoughts on my time, experiences, and hopes. For the curious, I should share what I'm doing next. The time I receive back will be spent on other boards and similar opportunities where I can perhaps share some fresh perspective. There are some personal and professional goals that I hope to achieve while I have the energy, like being on a university board of trustees and getting onto a corporate board that has more than one bottom line, like a solar or green energy business, or maybe something in agriculture. And while I may not be on this board, there's something for which I'll still advocate. And I'll share about that in just a moment. First, when Dr. Francis Michelini, affectionately known to us as Dr. Mike, was the chairman of the State Council of Higher Education, and I was new to the board, for some reason, I was assigned to the seat next to him, even though I was the greenest person at the table. He would lean over to me to share his honest thoughts with a little bit of a chuckle or a laugh, because while it was true that he felt passionately about the issues, he always would find a glimmer of humor to draw on to engender our friendship. His congeniality was a gift that he shared with many, and he was always so proud of our student representatives on the board. He served on the state board for more than 2 decades, starting in 1995, which is when I was a junior in college, and he was chairman of the Council of Higher Education starting in 2002. He was respected and admired before, during, and after his tenure, because he was an honest to goodness good man. He was fair and equitable. He was against discriminatory practices. He was in favor of giving chances. He loved education and the new doors it could open for everyone brought to its threshold. He was proud of the progress made over time by PDE and the state board, and he wished that we could all do more when we wanted to. It's been no secret that, like others of us, I admired his leadership. I felt that he and I were kindred spirits in many of our values. I have viewed this role that I've been blessed with, the role of the chairperson of the Council of Higher Education, as necessarily within the standard of temperament set by Dr. Mike. I hope that for the students and learners in our state and for all of you and for the public, that I have fulfilled that aspiration. Whoever fills this seat next, if it's someone from among you on this board, the rest of the board will be watching and judging you, I hope, by the Dr. Mike standard. It's not a standard that disallows opinion. Rather, it's a standard that invites your creativity and your voice. But in doing so, it's a standard that asks you to be tempered not radical, one-sided, or biased. You must be equitable, open-minded, respectful, treating others with dignity, and authentic to the mission of caring for all children and learners without letting personal interests or political objectives squelch the need for even-handedness and mindfulness of others and their views different than yours. Place your advocacy where the greatest lasting need lies, not the flavor of the day. Please place your advocacy where the greatest lasting need lies and not the flavor of the day. Flavors of the day come and go, and you will impugn your own reputation to hang your hat on them. Lasting needs are where we must place our focus, like human hunger when the world can produce enough food for everyone, and pollution in our air and oceans when we know that there can be better structured systems for production, disposal, and recycling. The lasting need in Pennsylvania's education structure is fairness. That is, equity in its funding. This is a gong that Dr. Mike rang for all of his years on the state board. It's a gong that I have resounded for all of mine. It will be loudest today, and the mallet that strikes it is shared symbolically with every one of you who become and who continue to be its champion. Pennsylvania's system of public primary and secondary education funding is deeply flawed. It is systemically broken. For all of the years that I've been on this board, we and PDE have grappled with how to lift up children who live in impoverished districts, how to lift up diverse children who live in those districts and elsewhere, and who were not historically given the same benefits as others. All of these collective successes are something to behold, and I'm proud of the board and PDE for this work. However, let's be very clear. The #1 ranked school district in the state is Radnor or Treadaford-Easttown, depending on the year. They are among the richest places on earth. Radnor in 2019 produced a remarkable ACT score, average ACT score of 28, which is roughly an equivalency of about a 1325 on the SAT. In Treadaford-Easttown, 99% of its high school graduates went on to attend college or university. The dead last school district is a toss-up between Chester Upland, Reading, Duquesne City, and Wilkinsburg Borough. I want to just take each of those for a moment. Chester Upland has an 8% proficiency in math. They're 18% proficient in reading. They've got a 51% graduation rate. Reading, 16% proficient in math, 28% proficient in reading, 62% graduation rate. Duquesne City, 15% proficient in math, 25% proficient in reading. And Wilkinsburg Borough, 15% proficient in math, 26% proficient in reading, and a 45% graduation rate. That's based on 2018 data. These 4 school districts are respectively ranked 498 through 501 out of 501 districts in the state. They, as you might guess, are not wealthy districts. When school taxes are collected in wealthy Radnor, they go to Radnor. When school taxes are collected in poor Chester Upland, they go to Chester Upland. Radnor and Chester are only 15 miles from each other, 20 minutes or so across the Blue Route. But the quality of their education is 180 degrees from each other by just about every economic refrain. Pennsylvania is the 21st wealthiest state in this nation, and yet Pennsylvania ranks 44th in the country in the state's share of funding for public schools. Specifically, this means that only about 38% of the costs of public education are covered by the state. Local school districts make up the difference, mostly through property taxes. This creates tangible disparities. No, it's not hard to figure out why there's a gap in academic progress or learning outcomes or opportunity. It's because Pennsylvania's Constitution woefully fails in calling for equity or equality in education. It only says, and I quote, "The General Assembly shall provide for the maintenance and support of a thorough and efficient system of public education to serve the needs of the Commonwealth." Thorough and efficient are good, but the absence of fairness in our Commonwealth's Constitution is an aberration. And the politicians and lawyers who argue for maintaining an inequitable funding system, even with the current language of the Constitution, have a magnet planted in their moral compass. The almighty dollar has supplanted God Almighty for them, and they ignore the good Lord's prescriptions for a life of service to the meek, the needy, the people who rarely can advocate for themselves. There is no equity when an American poor child can't get the same, or at least a similar public education as an American middle class or wealthy child. Public education's intent must be equity and equality for all children, no matter their economic conditions, race, creed, color, national origin, or any other immutable attribute. The children cannot help where they live. No one upon their birth is conferred with the judgment of which house they'll be raised in. Indeed, no child on this planet even asks to be born. Why is it then that we believe that babies born in one neighborhood deserve a better education than babies born in another? What can a child do about it? Who is their champion? When will someone finally infuse funding equity into our primary and secondary educational system? There is concrete, quantitative, irrefutable proof that children from the poor school districts do as well as the children from the rich school districts when they're given the same opportunity. So why does our government do so little to address the problem head on? It's because many of our legislators are themselves deeply biased. How can an elected official representing a wealthy district say, we want to give away our money to the poorer districts because they need it more? They won't. Their job preservation depends on their commitment to the will of the people in their district. And it's human nature to want better publicly funded schools for one's own children. In that very conflict between the self and the other, enrichment prevails over the needs of thy neighbor. The courts can cure the problem of inequitable public funding because the legislature thus far is unwilling to act meaningfully. The governor doesn't have the power to act unilaterally. And in a state where the legislature is controlled by one party and the governorship is controlled by another, it just isn't going to happen. Even when there's been better political alignment, it didn't happen. So why should we expect that it will happen now? It won't. It's our courts that need to awaken to their inner duty to hear and properly decide the cases that ask for equity in public school funding, like the William Penn case being litigated right now. For too long, the finger pointing on educational preparedness has been that colleges and universities say that the high schools aren't doing enough. In turn, the high schools point to the elementary schools. And they further point to early childhood education in preschools, as well as to the parents. It's political, I know, to say that the breakdown of the family unit is part of the problem. In my view, it is, but we also need to look at why it broke down. In the 1860s and earlier in America, enslaved people who were trafficked didn't get to be with their families. Their post-enslavement poverty didn't allow them to support a family. Denial of educational opportunities limited their economic and wealth-building options and gave them less ability to be a family unit, so important to child rearing. Today's champions of the "it takes a village" philosophy supplant the family unit with another family, but it is still our community crying for a family to raise a child. Scientists have studied the impact of children moving to richer neighborhoods with better school districts. In a Harvard University study by Chetty, Hendren, and Katz in 2015, randomly selected families in housing projects were giving housing vouchers to move to neighborhoods that had very little poverty. Here's what their research yielded. Quote, "We find robust evidence that children who moved to lower poverty, meaning wealthier areas, when they were young, i.e. below age 13, are more likely to attend college and have substantially higher incomes as adults. These children also live in better neighborhoods themselves as adults and are less likely to become single parents themselves." The researchers also evidenced that these children had a long-range income outlook that is 31% higher on average relative to the mean of the control group by the time they were in their mid-20s. There are some people who say that this is America where everyone gets a shot. They're right, but they're wrong. They're right because, yes, a few people from Chester City break from the shackles of history and find educational and lifelong success. But they're wrong because history has not benefited the overwhelming majority of the people of Chester, nor their predecessors. Their school district is among the dead last in the state. Among the many suggestions that can be made for dealing with the evil here described, I would respectfully include this. Let the people in the wealthy school districts who say everyone gets a chance in America place their kids into the Chester Upland School District for 12 or 14 years. We would then soon see a remarkable change in the conditions of our schools, and the uncomplaining thousands of children would receive the education humanity knows they deserve. So is the breakdown of the family unit a problem? It sure is. But guess what? Guess how that started? One needs to look no further than textbook American history. Our history is both a glorious independence from an oppressive king and a new land of the free for some, but not for all. It's the courts that have improved our conditions. Today, we are a land of freedom for all within our country, but our claim to be the land of opportunity is flawed by the cascading inequities that have yet to be righted. As I say to my children and my students, humans in their current form have been on Earth for more than 500,000 years. But it's only been in the last 150 years that we've gotten off the backs of horses. So don't think we're very advanced just yet. You can judge our society by how well we treat each other, by whether we're still grabbing for the bigger piece of meat around the fire pit. or sharing what we have with our neighbors in the next village. The courts are the best venue to effectuate change, even with judges biased by their fragility. Their elections and retention make them politicians, though at least they have more independence and autonomy than the other branches of government. Dear Pennsylvania judges, please do something about the systemic, long-standing, utter lack of primary and secondary educational funding equity in our Commonwealth. Dear Pennsylvania legislature, are you willing to lose your job for what is right? Update the Pennsylvania Constitution. It only needs a few words. Call upon me if you believe I can be of service. Make our Constitution require fair and equitable funding for all Pennsylvania's children, whether they are yours or others. After all, they are all ours. Dear Governor, great leaders counter polarization and engender earnestness among the people. They well up a love for the vision of what can be. The legislature will respond to the people if the people are imbued with the spirit of educational funding equity. Please heighten your voice on this issue. Dear fellow Pennsylvanians, please let your elected officials know how you feel. Silence is costing our children their future. Dear Secretary of Education and PDE, keep making lemonade out of lemons. Advocate with those who care, as we know that you already do. And my dear members of the Pennsylvania State Board of Education, thank you for being my friends and my colleagues. Please help carry the mallet and strike the gong. Strike it loudly. I'm retiring from the board, but I'm not planning on going away. If and when you need my help, I'll be a phone call away. Together, we will speed up that day when all of our children are educated from the mouths of teachers who are given living compensations in safe buildings that meet children's and instructors' teaching and learning needs, with transportation that parents and caregivers can be confident in, and with resources that offer them robust, equitable opportunities to learn and cherish country, family, and freedom. Thank you.